I'm sharing my screen now. Can you see my screen in
Yes,
front of
yes.
you? Yes, okay, wonderful. There we go. Okay, hi everyone. My name is Ezmieralda and I'm from Swiss German University in Indonesia. So basically, well, the title says that women empowerment and social media in Indonesia 10-year reflection, but I think the content is not specifically about my research only, but also about a little bit about my experience and how I got involved into ICT4D. And also, I would like to discuss about some of the challenges and also opportunities of conducting ICTD research, particularly in Indonesia. So let me start with the context of ICT4D research in Indonesia. Well, as one of the emerging markets for technologies in the global south, many ICTD programs are actually conducted in Indonesia, and it has been going on like for so long, since the 1980s. But mostly these programs concentrated in three different fields. Number one is agriculture, because Indonesia is a very, how to say, like the main like professions for a lot of Indonesians are in the field of agriculture. And at the same time as well, many of the programs are concentrating in the issues of health and health provisions. And finally, recently in the past few decades, we've seen a lot of ICT-D programs in Indonesia concentrates in the field of finances, including microfinances in the remote areas of the countries. Therefore, like considering this, well, supposed to be that it is important that there are researchers that trying to investigate how these programs actually contribute to the social and economic development purposes in the countries. Um, However, though, despite the abundance of programs, very few researches in the area of ICT4Ds have actually been conducted in Indonesia. I was just looking into like some examples or some anecdotes about this several weeks ago. For example, in the year 2017, there was a conference, IFIP conference, which is one of the most, how to say, prominent conference in the field of ICT4Ds, especially in the Asia and the Global South regions. And it was conducted in Indonesia. It was conducted in Yogyakarta. So you would assume usually when a conference like this is conducted in the countries, there will be a lot of participants from that particular countries. But then there were actually only 3 out of 118 papers presented about Indonesia at this conference. So the number is very small in comparisons to the studies that are presented about other countries. And the more recent ICT-D conference, which was conducted last year, there wasn't any paper presented about Indonesia or presented by an Indonesian researchers. And at the same time as well, as I mentioned, there are many like programs or interventions conducted in Indonesia in the field of ICT4Ds, but most of the time evaluations of these programs are conducted by foreign scholars and rarely involve the local scholars in the process. For example, in 2013, 2014, I was involved as part of the, how to say, a local managers of one of the scholars from America who get the funding to actually conducting an evaluations programs of um, like uh, like mobile phones applications um, distributed by one of our biggest telecommunications providers to help women entrepreneurs that comes from middle to low backgrounds. Yeah, but then it's all conducted by the foreign researchers and funded by as well by foreign foreign funders. And it did not involve any expertise from the countries. And if we're looking into the education sectors, currently the field of ICT 4Ds, if you want to call it like that, are only offered by two universities. The first one is IPB, which is an agricultural universities, and the other one is Universitas Gadjah Mada, UGM, who's also embedded the program within their Faculty of Agriculture. But however, interestingly, that these two programs are offered with or embedded in the Communication for Development program. So that's what they call it, Communication for Development. So if I look into the curriculum in these two programs are not necessarily talking about technologies and how technologies are actually helping or improving the welfare or the livelihood of the communities, but these programs are only concentrating on how like different NGOs or different government institutions can do counseling in terms of technological adaptations in different communities. So it's really heavy on the counseling skills and knowledge rather than ICT 4D as a whole or holistically. Then I want to talk a little bit about how I got to be involved in this area of ICT 4D. Well, basically it was through a program called Circa. This program is organized by the Wee Kim Wee School of Communications at National University of Singapore. So they got a grant from IDRC, which is an institution in Canada that offers a lot of grants and also funding in the area of ICT 4D. So it happens between 2011 to 2013, and this program was specifically for emerging scholars or junior scholars, they call it, and it contained different activities throughout the 2 years. It doesn't only give us the research grant, but it also provided different mentoring activities. So we got a more prominent ICTD scholars to mentor us to actually work together in the projects that we were doing. And also offered a lot of networking opportunities through meetings, through trainings, and also it allowed us to participate in the big conferences like the ICTD conferences in 2011 and in 2013. And at the same time, another thing that I think is very useful apart from the networking is also information sharings, because to date, the information that I got about the field of ICT 4D is coming from our Facebook page. So we developed a Facebook page, and then continuously the members share different informations. For example, last year, I feel really fortunate that I learned about the IPID summer school also through the information that was shared by one of the members of this Facebook group. So I find it really, really important. If, for example, if I wasn't involved in this kind of communities, like in Circa and also like in IPID right now, it's really hard locally at least to get informations about opportunities or collaborations, activities, networkings, activities, and conferences if we are not involved in this like networks. And then again, what happened after Circa? So the Circa program ended at the end of 2013. And then through the program, I got to know some scholars from Indonesia who are somehow, or scholars or activists who are somehow working in the area of ICT 4D. So eventually we decided, or there were like some people who initiated to form a network groups with some really great ideas on maintaining and also promoting the area of ICT 4D in Indonesia, but unfortunately they were not sustainable. So I think reason being is that, to tell the truth, the topic of ICT 4D are still not very popular among Indonesian scholars. It's how to say, especially for example, I come from social sciences. In the social sciences, the focus is a lot about like politics, or is which is a really sexy topics for Indonesians, and also about gender equality, but more into how genders are communicated in a society, rather than, for example, the influences of technologies towards gender, for instance. For example, one thing that is really interesting, I really wanted to do my PhD. I did my PhD from 2014 to 2019. So I wanted to be somehow related to my ICT 4Ds, but then I was working with this really prominent scholars in Australia specializing in Indonesia, but she was actually directing it towards something else, like, so not ICT 4D, because again, the topic of ICT 4D is not a really, how to say, like sexy topics for Indonesian studies, for instance. And at the same time, because of this, of course, there are some difficulties in securing grants and access to the communities, because it's not, the information is not readily available even in the research networks or in the research communities in Indonesia. Okay, so let me talk a little bit about my research then. Well, my research in 2011 to 2013, our research actually, because Anis was also part of the team, the purpose was to investigate the potential of social media to boost women empowerment through entrepreneurship. So we realized that despite of like in other countries, a lot of women, due to, especially in emerging economies, a lot of women find the difficulties in managing between professional and their family life. And like coming back to our discussions at the beginning, there's always women's always have the dilemma whether to pursue a career or staying at home and taking care of the family. And then we realized that in 2009, 2010, there is really interesting movement going on where women who starting selling different things on social media, and at that time particularly on Facebook. And so we were really interested in that. We would like to know how the ease of using social media actually encouraging them to pursue entrepreneurship ventures. So we studied women who own micro and small businesses in urban areas of Indonesia. Why urban areas? Because we need to make sure that these are the people who could get good access to the internet. So then that's why they can carry on their businesses. So there are 5 cities: Jakarta, Bandung, Surabaya, Medan, and Makassar. But what we focus on, not necessarily on the economic impact only, but we were more interested on how owning a business contributing to their empowerment, particularly in the areas of social capital and also self-actualizations. And it was really interesting to know that for a lot of women, this kind of business, you might see it as small, but it's really encouraging, because like the fact that they can earn money while also taking care of the kids is also already like ease the burden. They don't have to go out of the house. They can take care of their children together with doing some business. But not only that, but one thing that is really interesting is they had this feeling of sisterhood, because they're connected with other women and they can help each other. They can self-actualize. They can inspire each other, or they can even help each other to make the business grow. And at the same time as well, they realize that it kind of like be a form of self-actualizations with them, because they earn money. They felt that we found that they had a feelings of they have more power in the family's decision making, because now they do not need to only depend on their husbands to buy something or to earn something, but they have their own money, and many of them actually surpass the husband's income. And this is interesting. I know this is really common right now, doing business like this, and a lot of women are doing that. But 10 years ago, it was still, how to say, an emerging industry, want to call it like that. So then in 2014, as you can see, there's a gap, 2014 until 2019, is because I left to do my PhD. And as I told you, my PhD is not in ICT 4D. And so when I returned, we decided to let's revisit them and see how it is going right now. And it's really interesting to see that at the same time, it's really encouraging. Some women actually became really big in their business. And so we contacted the same participants. Several of them actually was able to convince their husband to stop working and to help in the business. So the wife became the boss. The husband assisted the wife, because the husband started to realize that we're making more money doing this than me working in the corporate sector. So that is really encouraging. But on the other hand, we also see, especially with the older women entrepreneurs, due to their limitations in technological adaptations, their business stopped. So they did not continue. So we were just wondering, at the same time, we're also wondering, we are actually planning in 2019, 2020 to do more field research focusing on these technological adaptations, because we find it like really interesting. What actually is the key for women to be able to sustain and expand their business and actually become the catalyst of other women entrepreneurs? And at the same time, unfortunately, we were not able yet to do that. We were trying in 2020, conducting interviews and FGDs through online communications, but we found it, I don't know, I didn't feel satisfied. Anis didn't feel satisfied. There's like something missing when you cannot go to the field, but because of COVID, we are not able yet to do a field work to explore that. And at the same time, I think it's really interesting as well. We really want to explore the impacts of COVID-19 pandemics to their business, whether it's actually growing or it's actually like kind of like discouraging them for growing the business. So now, like this will be my second to last slide. I will be really quick in this. So some of the challenges that I find, well, even before COVID, but with COVID as well, is that field work is becoming really challenging, because in the past, again, touching a little bit of being a mom and a researcher, in the past, every time I went to the field work, well, luckily my field work were not in the remote area as many of you. I always had to bring my children along. So they always tag along with me. So at the same time, before COVID, it was actually really encouraging, because then I could tell my participants, then it's okay, you can always bring your kids and then they can play, and then let's just talk, because I bring my kids along as well. So kind of like it's a good connections with the research participants. But then now with COVID, I mean, of course, we are afraid of being with too many people, and then traveling with children's. Even traveling by yourself is already a hassle in itself, but traveling with children, it's making it almost like impossible to do field work, because there's a lot of measurements that we need to take. And number two, the challenges is also related to funding. I mean, funding itself is available. The government provide competitive grants every year. But the issues is that I think because most of the money that the government has right now is focusing on this COVID like pandemic, helping people, vaccinations, etc., most of the time, even if you are granted a grant, but then the money will be dispersed far later. So you sort of need to have your own backup money to conduct the research in order to keep it on track. And administrations as well. I find like administration is an issue. I don't know in other countries, but in Indonesia, when you're doing research, you need to do a lot of administrations, like report to the government, to the universities, etc. And I find with the limited time that we have, it's really, how to say, kind of like slowing down the process and access to communities as well, because like, for example, with the women entrepreneurs, we're trying to get local contacts, but then sometimes it's really hard to, unless in areas, as well to the lack of local networks. And finally, human resources. Because as I said that I had like a strong team when I was working 2011, 2013, and it was really good. I mean, I was really happy with the team. But then some decided to do a much more, like I said, sexier research rather than ICT4D. So lack of human resources is also an issue. However, though, with challenges, of course, there are opportunities. As we know that women empowerment is one of the 17 SDGs, right? So even the government is encouraging different programs related to women empowerment. So even providing grants, providing opportunities to actually doing trainings, for instance. And so partnership with government institutions is one thing that I would like to explore, and cooperating with them. And these issues of small, medium enterprises conducted by women has been brought up to the public discourses in the past few years. So it is an opportunity as well. And forums like this, I mean, I'm very fortunate to actually involve in a forum like what we're having today. I think this will provide a lot of opportunities, getting to know what other people are doing. For example, yesterday I got to learn that actually APC has a program in Indonesia called Common Room. I was just checking and I felt like, oh, that's really interesting. And it allows me to know what's going on, probably because otherwise I wouldn't be able to know about this. And as well with the pandemic, the government shows more concerns about technologies and technological development in different parts of Indonesia. So I think that is also an opportunity that I can explore. So that's all for me. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you for the presentation, Dr. Ezmieralda. So does anyone have any questions? If not, I have one question here. So what do you think?
I have a question.
All right. Okay. Maybe you can ask first then. Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. You know, this is very interesting work because I think when you talk about, especially for us in I'm talking about Sarawak, a lot of women, you know, have actually gone into online business. You know, one thing is because of the pandemic as well, and many of them are finding that, you know, a lot of promotion marketing is done through like you were saying, whether it's Twitter, Instagram, or even other forms of social media. And I think WhatsApp has been used a lot by many women in rural areas as well. But because of the pandemic, you know, your research from 2019 onwards, you couldn't look at the impact. Yeah. I do not know whether you know of any other work that anyone else has done, you know, in this area, because you're also looking at it and wondering whether, you know, we could learn from some of this research that has been done by the other researchers as well. Are you aware of that?
Yes, actually, because like later on, because she couldn't join yesterday, but then I just learned last year actually that there is this scholars from the University of Islam Negeri Jakarta. She will be presenting hopefully today, Professor Amelia Fauzia. So I was actually learning that she was doing similarly, but mostly she wants to know in the, like her focus is with Muslim women, because she's interested in knowing how the technologies is actually promoting entrepreneurship among Muslim women. It is because I was invited to be part of the in her expert meeting last year. Her focus is trying to understand, because in the Muslim society sometimes, like Ani said, there is kind of like saying that women's positions is in the house, like they're the first how to say madrasa, or the first school for the children, so they're not usually involved in a lot of economic activities. So Professor Fauzia is actually concentrating on, with these new technologies that allowing women to become entrepreneurs, how is it changes it among Muslim women. So hopefully she will be presenting. So that is one recent studies that I know that I'm familiar with, that I've been reading. Yeah.
Oh, that's good. That's good. Is there anyone else in this group that actually, knows about research has been done in your own countries as well, with regard to using social media, especially to empower women, especially in rural areas? Anyone else in this group?
So I just wanted to add one thing. So I'm not sure about rural areas, but I know there are a couple of companies that are encouraging. So it's a very different type of model I came across recently. So earlier it used to happen more, you had some friends who would bring in some, clothes or some home things, and they would come and show you that. So they were sort of agents in between, right? They would get some commission if they were able to make a sale. So a different model that I have recently heard of, that a lot of companies, at least a couple of companies are promoting, is on doing a similar model but online. So for example, if you have, so it's like Amway dealer, Amway, um, what do you call it? It's like a franchisee in a sense.
Multi-level marketing.
Yeah, it's multi-level marketing basically.
Yeah.
So earlier you would actually have the stuff, you would buy it, or you would actually get the stuff, and then you would sell it off and so on. So now what I have seen people do is they would send all of this over WhatsApp. So WhatsApp is very popular for this in especially in low literate and that demographic. They don't do Instagram so much. So what they do is they send images to their friends, family, acquaintances over WhatsApp, and then if somebody wants is interested in any of the product, then they come back to this person and they place the orders to the company or the vendor directly. And the way it has changed is that the product gets delivered to the customer directly, and then they sort of get the commission. So it has sort of shifted, but WhatsApp has been used for doing that, I realize. Because a lot of people are very comfortable consuming content, images over WhatsApp. They may not actually contribute or type anything, but they are pretty comfortable actually browsing through stuff and so on. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.